Ambassador Paul Johnson walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The room was huge, with seats for over 300 alien species. Strange sounds filled the air as the aliens talked among themselves and their translator devices buzzed. Paul tried to keep his face calm, but inside he felt angry and worried. The 7 most important aliens sat high above everyone else. They came from the oldest space-traveling species. Some looked at Paul with interest, others didn't try to hide their dislike for him. Paul stood alone in the middle of the floor. He was the only human in the room. His simple gray suit looked plain next to the colorful clothes and natural body coverings of the aliens. Zalmor, the leader from the Zenthian people, raised his 4-fingered hand for quiet. The room fell silent. The human request to join deep spacefighting operations is denied, Zalmor said. His 4 eyes blinked one after another, which meant his decision was final. Humans must stay in support jobs within 50 light-years of Earth. Paul kept his diplomatic face on, but his jaw tightened slightly. With respect, High Counselor, humans have been good allies for 15 years now. Our soldiers have shown they are easy to break, interrupted Counselor Vereen. Her skin was see-through and glowed with light patterns that showed she was amused. Your kind is too weak for frontline fighting against the swarm. Laughter spread through the room. Even the usually serious Drell aliens clicked their mouth parts in what passed for laughter among their kind. This is not just about physical strength. Paul tried again. Humans bring new ways of thinking about battles and can adapt quickly to. High Counselor Drax lifted his large, scaly hand. The Council has looked at all the evidence. Humans are useful for tech support, moving, supplies and medical work, but the ban on combat duty stays. We are done talking about this. Paul took a deep breath. He had expected this answer, but it still stung. 15 years of humans proving themselves, and still the Council saw them as the weaklings of the galaxy. Thank you for your time, counselors, Paul said with a small bow. He turned and walked out with his head high, ignoring the whispers and clicks from the alien delegates. Outside the chamber, Commander Lisa Wright waited for him. Her blue uniform was perfect despite her long trip from Earth. Her short blonde hair was neatly trimmed and her green eyes watched Paul's face carefully. No luck? She asked, though she already knew the answer. They still think we're just good for fixing their computers and bandaging their wounds, Paul said. They walked down the wide hallway, their footsteps echoing on the stone-like floor. The space station's artificial gravity felt slightly stronger than Earth normal, but both humans had gotten used to it. Lisa looked around to make sure no aliens were close enough to hear. Then it's time we showed them what humans can really do. Admiral Carter has given the green light for Operation Ghost Protocol. Paul stopped walking and turned to her. The secret battle videos? Are you sure? Lisa nodded, her face serious. From the Arcturus incident, the Council thinks they know what humans can do in a fight. They're about to learn how wrong they are. This is a big step, Paul said quietly. Once we show them that side of humanity, we can't take it back. We've tried being patient for 15 years, Lisa replied. We've tried playing by their rules. It's gotten us nowhere. The swarm is getting bolder and the Alliance needs every fighter they can get, whether they know it or not. Paul thought about it for a moment. The Arcturus footage had been kept secret for good reasons. What happened there would change how every alien species saw humans forever. What about the soldiers involved? He asked. Sergeant Foster and his team? They've all agreed. They're tired of hiding what they can do. Lisa pulled out a small data crystal from her pocket. It glowed with a soft blue light. The full, unedited footage. Everything the official reports left out. Paul took the crystal and slipped it into his own pocket. The Council has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. The swarm attacked another border colony last week. I'll request time to present this then. They reached the transport bay where small ships waited to take people to different parts of the massive space station. The bay was busy with aliens of all kinds, tall, thin Vespids with their insect-like bodies, bulky Drell with their hard outer shells, floating Marians who looked like jellyfish, and many others. None of them gave the 2 humans more than a passing glance. Humans weren't important enough to notice. I'll get the meeting room ready, Lisa said. We'll need the high-security protocols. Some of the council members might not react well to what they see. Paul nodded. Send me the details once it's set up. I need to prepare what I'm going to say. As they waited for separate transport pods, Paul looked out the large window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was spreading, destroying everything in its path. The Alliance was fighting back, but without humans on the front lines, they were missing a key weapon. Do you think this will change their minds? Lisa asked quietly. Paul watched as a large military ship passed by the station. It carried the marks of the Zenthian fleet, the same people whose leader had dismissed humans so easily. It will change something, Paul said. Whether it's their minds or just their nightmares remains to be seen. A small transport pod arrived, its door sliding open with a soft hiss. Lisa stepped in and gave Paul a final look. Either way, after tomorrow, they won't be laughing at us anymore. The pod door closed and Lisa disappeared down the transport tube. Paul waited for his own pod, the data crystal feeling heavy in his pocket. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. He thought about Sergeant Alan Foster and what he had done on Arcturus Station. The aliens thought humans were weak, because their bodies broke easily. They didn't understand that this had made humans stronger in other ways. When your body can break, you learn to keep fighting anyway. You learn to ignore pain. You learn to be more dangerous when you're hurt. Tomorrow, the Council would learn what humanity had been hiding all these years. They would see why Earth's old stories were filled with heroes who kept fighting after they should have died. They would understand why, in all of human history, no enemy had ever won just by making humans bleed. Paul's transport pod arrived. As he stepped in, he touched the crystal in his pocket one more time. The Council had mocked the human band today. After tomorrow's meeting, they wouldn't be laughing. They would be speechless. The Situation Room aboard the Alliance space station Harmony was filled with alien military leaders. They stood around a large table with a glowing map floating above it. Captain Steve Miller and Lieutenant Kelly Martinez sat in chairs at the back of the room. No one had asked them to join the meeting. They were only there because protocol said each species needed representatives during war planning. General Krillvax towered over everyone else. His insect-like body was nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and a hard outer shell that shimmered in the room's blue light. He pointed at the map with one of his clawed hands. The swarm has built defenses in these 3 areas, he said, his voice coming through a translator box on his chest. We will need our strongest attack units to break through. Commander Zex of the Drell clicked his mouthparts together in agreement. The sound echoed in the room. The Drell soldiers will lead the attack, he said. Our hard shells can resist the swarm's acid better than most. From across the table, Admiral Thravix of the Zenthian fleet tilted his 4-eyed head. I heard. The humans have asked to join the fight with combat units. The room got quiet for a moment. Then laughter broke out among the alien commanders. Perhaps they could bring drinks to our warriors, said General Krillvax. His joke didn't translate well, but everyone understood what he meant. Major Droolzan, a veteran Procyon commander with gray fur and a scarred face, turned to look at Steve and Kelly. No offense, humans, but your kind simply isn't built for this type of war. Your bodies bruise when hit by a gentle bump. Your bones break under pressures our children could handle. You need such specific air to breathe. Kelly's hand tightened into a fist, but Steve touched her arm gently. Now wasn't the time to show anger. We understand your concerns, Steve said calmly. But maybe there are things about human fighting skills that you haven't seen yet. Admiral, Thravix waved one of his hands dismissively. We've seen all your training exercises. Your kind does well in support roles, but frontline combat. The Council's ban is to protect you. And yet, Kelly said, speaking up for the first time, when the swarm broke into Arcturus Station last year, it was a human security team that stopped them. The room went quiet for a moment. A small attack, said General Krillvax, breaking the silence. And the official report says the station's automatic defense systems took care of it. Steve smiled slightly. Not all reports tell the whole story, General. The alien leaders looked at each other, then went back to planning as if the humans hadn't spoken. For the next hour, Steve and Kelly sat quietly as the aliens discussed strategy and troop movements. No one asked for their input. When the meeting ended, the aliens filed out of the room, some nodding politely to the humans, others ignoring them completely. Kelly stood up quickly once they were alone. "They treat us like children," she said, pacing across the empty room. "Like we're too fragile to fight." "They don't know any better," Steve replied, still sitting calmly. "But they will soon. Ambassador Johnson just got permission from Earth Command. The Arcturus footage has been cleared to show the Council." Kelly stopped pacing. "The real footage? All of it?" Steve nodded. "All of it." "About time," Kelly said, a smile spreading across her face. "I'd like to see General Krillvax's face when he watches what Sergeant Foster did to that queen." They left the Situation Room and walked down the curved hallway of the space station. The station was designed by the Zenthians, so the ceilings were higher than humans needed. The artificial gravity was also set slightly stronger than Earth normal. It was a small discomfort, but a constant reminder that this place wasn't built with humans in mind. "When will they show the footage?" Kelly asked as they headed to the human quarters. "Emergency council session tomorrow," Steve replied. "Johnson requested just 20 minutes of their time. They think he's going to make another plea for lifting the combat ban." 20 minutes should be enough," Kelly said. "The Arcturus incident only lasted 17 minutes from start to finish. 17 minutes that will change how they see us forever," Steve said. He looked out a window as they passed, watching the stars. "Do you think they're ready for it?" Kelly shrugged. "Does it matter? The swarm is getting closer to Earth every month. We've played nice, followed their rules, and where has it gotten us? Sitting in the back of rooms while they plan battles." They reached the human section of the station. Unlike the grand, high-ceilinged areas where the other species lived, the human quarters were simple and functional, just enough space for the 200 humans stationed here. "I was talking to Dr. Harris yesterday," Steve said as they entered the common area. "He said 3 more colonies on the outer rim were attacked last week. The Alliance lost 2 of them completely." "With humans in the fight, they wouldn't have lost either," Kelly said firmly. "Maybe," Steve replied. "But after tomorrow, we'll finally get the chance to prove it. I just hope they understand why we kept this from them for so long." "They'll understand," Kelly said. "Or they won't. Either way, they'll know what we can do." In his office elsewhere on the station, Ambassador Paul Johnson reviewed his notes for the emergency session. The data crystal containing the Arcturus footage sat on his desk, glowing softly. Commander Lisa Wright entered after a quick knock. "Everything's ready for tomorrow," she said. "High security protocols in place. The footage will only be viewable in the council chamber." Paul nodded. "Good. And you've warned our medical team to be ready? Some species might have strong reactions." "Done," Lisa said. "Though I think the Vespids and Zenthians will be more excited than shocked. They respect fighting skill, even if it's different from their own." "And the others?" Paul asked. Lisa sighed. "The Marians might be disturbed. Their whole culture is based on peaceful solutions, but they need to see this too. They need to understand that humans don't fight like the other species." Paul picked up the data crystal, turning it in his fingers. 15 years we've been part of this alliance. 15 years of being underestimated, sidelined, and mocked. Tomorrow, that ends. For better or worse, Lisa added. For better or worse, Paul agreed. He put the crystal in a secure case. Get some rest, Commander. Tomorrow will be a long day. As Lisa left, Paul looked at the battle plans on his desk. The Alliance was losing the war against the swarm, inch by inch, planet by planet. Not because they lacked numbers or technology, but because they lacked something humans had learned through thousands of years of warfare on Earth, the will to do whatever it takes to win. Tomorrow, the Council would see what that looked like. They would watch as 17 humans with limited weapons faced hundreds of swarm drones and a queen. They would see combat techniques no alien had witnessed before. They would learn why, throughout human history, it was never wise to corner a human and leave them no way out except through you. Paul closed the battle plans and turned off the lights in his office. By this time tomorrow, the ban on human combat units would be lifted, and the swarm would learn, as so many enemies of humanity had learned before, that humans were most dangerous when you thought they were defeated. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council wasn't planned to last long. Ambassador Paul Johnson had asked for just 20 minutes of their time. This was unusual since council meetings usually went on for days. All 7 high counselors were there, along with military leaders from the main alliance powers. Paul stood in the center of the chamber. He held a small data crystal in his hand. Respected counselors, I have been given permission to share secret footage from an incident at Arcturus Station 15 months ago, Paul announced. The official report said it was a small swarm attack that was handled by automatic systems. That was not completely true. High Counselor Zalmor leaned forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Paul. Giving false reports to the council is a serious offense, Ambassador. Not false, High Counselor, just incomplete, for security reasons that you will soon understand. Paul placed the crystal into the projection device. The lights dimmed as the huge display activated, showing security camera views from many angles around a space station. The timestamp showed it was the middle of the night on the station. At first, everything looked normal. Then emergency lights started flashing. The view changed to show the outside of the station. A swarm bioship, much bigger than reported, was attaching itself to the station's hull and burning through. This was not a small attack, Paul said calmly. This was a Queen-class swarm ship carrying over 300 drones. The automatic defenses had been damaged by swarm spies weeks before. When the attack happened, only 17 humans were awake and able to respond. The council chamber was completely quiet as the footage showed the first breach. Swarm drones poured into the station's main cargo area. Their insect-like bodies moved with frightening speed. Their acid weapons melted through inner walls. Then the first human security team arrived. Just 4 people in light armor, carrying what looked like very weak weapons. The aliens in the council chamber looked at each other, expecting to see the humans die quickly. What happened next made several counselors stand up in shock. The humans moved with speed and precision that seemed impossible for their supposedly fragile bodies. They communicated with hand signals and fought with a coordinated violence that none had seen before. Where the aliens expected careful defense, they saw aggressive attack. Where they expected retreat, they saw advance. Sergeant Alan Foster, the YAO, team leader shown by the caption, didn't fire his weapon at first. He charged directly at the nearest drone, stepped around its acid spray and drove a combat knife through a gap in its armor that should not have been visible to the naked eye. He twisted, and the drone collapsed. The 3 other team members, Corporal Maria Diaz, Specialist John Brown, and Private Diana Wilson, showed equally shocking combat skill. They didn't just fight. They adapted in real time to the swarm's tactics, using the station's environment in ways that seemed both reckless and brilliant. When a second wave of drones cornered them, Diana Wilson pulled the pins on 3 grenades, at once, holding them until the last possible second before throwing them in different directions and diving behind small cover. The resulting explosions should have killed her from the metal fragments alone, yet she emerged to continue fighting. Paul, pause the footage. This is standard human combat approach against swarm attacks. What you're about to see next has been classified level Omega until today. The footage continued, showing the humans meeting a swarm queen, a massive creature 3 times larger than the drones. In Alliance military history, killing a queen typically required attacks from orbit or at minimum a full unit of elite warriors. Sergeant Foster assessed the situation in seconds, then did something that caused audible gasps in the council chamber. He removed parts of his armor, exposing vulnerable skin, and injected himself with something from his medical kit. Combat stimulants, Paul explained. Forbidden for most species because they are deadly. For humans, they temporarily increase strength and speed at the cost of significant physical damage that shows up after the battle. What followed was a display of combat that looked suicidal, yet was executed with calculated precision. Foster moved faster than seemed possible, his movements blurring as he got close to the queen. The other 3 humans provided covering fire, each taking injuries that would have stopped most Alliance species yet continuing to fight with undiminished effectiveness. Foster reached the Queen and began climbing its body, driving his combat knife repeatedly into specific points as acid burned through his remaining armor and into his skin. His face, visible on a close-up camera feed, showed pain, but complete focus. When he reached the Queen's head, he pulled his last grenade, forced it into the creature's main sensing organ, and was thrown clear by the Queen's thrashing. The explosion took off the Queen's head. Foster landed 30 feet away, his body broken, in ways that should have meant immediate death. Yet the footage showed him dragging himself back to his weapon and continuing to fire at remaining drones until medical teams arrived. Paul stopped the recording and faced the silent council. 17 humans defended Arcturus Station that day. 4 died. The rest had injuries that would be fatal to most council species. All returned to active duty within 2 months. This is what humans bring to combat situations. Not just technical, skill or supply support, but a capacity for controlled violence and physical endurance that we've deliberately kept hidden. The council chamber remained silent for a full minute after the footage ended. Ambassador Paul Johnson stood calmly, hands behind his back, waiting. High Counselor Zalmor was the first to speak, his voice unusually quiet. Why hide these abilities? The Alliance could have benefited from this combat efficiency. Because we understood how we would be seen, Paul replied. Humanity's history is filled with violence. When we joined the Alliance, we recognized that our natural combat instincts would be viewed as barbaric rather than valuable. So we presented ourselves as physically weaker, but technologically smart. We accepted roles that used our intellectual strengths while we assessed whether the Alliance would accept our other capabilities. Counselor Varine's skin patterns had shifted to colors showing distress. Those soldiers shouldn't have survived their wounds. Their pain tolerance alone is different from most species. Paul completed her thought. Human pain doesn't stop us the same way. It can be channeled, even used as motivation in combat situations. Commander Lisa Wright stepped forward, having watched from the side. The human saying is fighting like hell. When our survival is threatened, humans access reserves of strength and aggression that remain dormant in peaceful situations. From his seat, General Krillvax of the Vespid forces studied the now frozen image of Sergeant Foster. The combat stimulants, they're clearly destructive to human bodies, yet your soldiers use them willingly. Self-sacrifice for group survival is a core human value, Lisa explained. We call it taking one for the team. The damage is significant but rarely permanent with our medical technology. High Counselor Drax, who had been silently watching with unblinking eyes, finally spoke. I believe we have misunderstood humanity's potential contribution to Alliance security. An aide hurried to Paul, whispering urgently in his ear. Paul's expression darkened as he addressed the council again. Counselors, I've just received word that the Swarm has launched a major attack in the Cygnus sector. 3 Alliance colonies are under attack, including a main medical facility with over 10,000 civilians. The council erupted in concerned murmurs. The Cygnus sector was poorly defended, relying on the belief that the Swarm wouldn't risk such a direct attack. The nearest major Alliance fleet is 3 days away at maximum faster-than-light speed, stated Admiral Thravix grimly. Paul exchanged glances with Lisa before addressing the council again. The human expeditionary force can deploy within 6 hours. 2,000 combat-ready personnel with full support units, if the council will temporarily lift the combat restrictions. For the first time in recorded history, the Galactic Council took less than an hour to reach a unanimous decision. 6 hours after the council meeting, the human expeditionary force was on its way to the Cygnus sector. Ambassador Paul Johnson stood in the command center of the Alliance station, watching on the large screen as the human ships jumped to faster-than-light speed. 2,000 soldiers, said High Counselor Zalmor, who had come to watch the deployment, against an estimated swarm force of 8,000. Can they truly make a difference? Paul nodded without looking away from the screen. They can, and they will. I've reviewed the battle plan your commanders submitted, Zalmor said. It's unlike anything our strategist would recommend. Your forces are splitting into small teams to attack multiple points simultaneously. Humans don't fight well in rigid formations, Paul explained. We prefer flexibility, adaptation. Small teams can move quickly, exploit weaknesses. High Counselor Drax joined them, his scaled body reflecting the blue light of the command center displays. The medical facility on Cygnus Prime has begun evacuation, but they need at least 12 hours to get all patients off-world. The swarm will reach them in 10. Colonel Nancy Ford is leading the operation personally, Paul said. She'll buy them those extra hours. Zalmor and Drax exchanged looks. The human plan seemed like suicide to them. 2,000 soldiers spread thin across 3 planets against a swarm force 4 times their size. We've authorized 3 Alliance I battle fleets to head to Cygnus, Drax told Paul. But as Admiral Thravik said, they won't arrive for 3 days. Then we'll hold for 3 days, Paul replied simply. For the next few hours, the command center was quiet as they waited for news. Alliance officers moved from station to station, checking updates as they came in. The atmosphere was tense. First contact with swarm forces on Cygnus III, announced a communications officer suddenly. Human teams engaged. The main screen changed to show tactical displays from the planet. Red dots representing swarm forces were moving toward 3 major settlements. Blue dots representing human soldiers appeared to be everywhere at once, moving in patterns that seemed random at first glance. What are they doing? Asked Zalmor, confused by the display. They're not forming defensive lines around the settlements. They're not defending, Paul said. They're attacking. Indeed, the blue dots were moving into the mass of red, creating chaos in what should have been an organized swarm assault. The swarm forces began to split up, trying to deal with threats coming from multiple directions. Incoming transmission. From Cygnus III Ground Command, said the communications officer. Colonel Nancy Ford's face appeared on a side screen. She was in full combat armor, her helmet visor up to show her face. In the background, they could see a makeshift command post, with officers moving quickly. Ambassador Counselors, she nodded. Phase 1 is complete. The swarm advance on all 3 settlements has been disrupted. We forced them to divide their forces. Casualties? Asked Paul. Within expected parameters, Ford replied, which was not a direct answer. We've identified 3 swarm queens coordinating the attack. Teams are moving to neutralize them now. Zalmor leaned toward the screen. Colonel, our tactical advisors suggest you focus on evacuating the civilians and holding defensive positions until the fleet arrives. Ford's expression didn't change. With respect, Counselor, if we wait 3 days in defensive positions, there won't be anything left to save. The swarm will simply wear us down with numbers. She looked at Paul. We're proceeding with Operation Hornet's Nest. Paul nodded. Good hunting, Colonel. The transmission ended and the tactical display changed again. The blue dots were now moving deeper into swarm territory, often blinking out as soldiers fell, but always pushing forward. What is this Operation Hornet's Nest? Asked Drax. An old human strategy, Paul explained. When you're outnumbered, you don't try to defend everything at once. You strike at the enemy's command structure. Cut off. The head and the body dies. They're going after the queens, Zalmor realized. But that's extremely dangerous, Paul finished for him. Yes, but also effective. For the next 6 hours, they watched as human forces on all 3 planets executed their plan. It was unlike any battle the Alliance had fought before. The humans didn't try to hold territory or set up defensive lines. They moved constantly, appearing where the swarm least expected them, striking hard, then disappearing before the full might of the swarm could respond. And they were taking losses, heavy losses. The blue dots on the display kept blinking out, but those that remained continued pushing forward with undiminished determination. Their casualty rate is approaching 40%, said a Zenthian tactical officer, her voice showing concern. They cannot sustain this approach. They don't need to sustain it, Paul replied. They just need to succeed. On the 18th hour, a cheer went up in the command center. On Cygnus II, A human strike team had reached a queen and eliminated it. 2 hours later, a second queen on Cygnus III fell. Without their leaders, the swarm forces on those planets became disorganized, attacking in random patterns that were easier to predict and counter. But on Cygnus Prime, where the medical facility was located, the largest swarm force remained organized. Its queen was deep in a natural cave system, protected by thousands of drones. Evacuation of the medical facility is at 85%, reported an aide. They need 1 more hour. The human forces on Cygnus Prime are down to 300 operational soldiers, said the tactical officer. They've been fighting non-stop for nearly 24 hours. Paul watched the display, his face showing no emotion, but inside he felt pride and worry in equal measure. The humans were doing exactly what they had trained for, what they excelled at. But the cost was high. A new transmission came in. It was Colonel Ford again, but this time from Cygnus Prime. Her armor was damaged, covered in dark swarm blood and burn marks from acid. A bandage was wrapped around her head, blood seeping through. "Ambassador," she said, her voice tired but determined. "We've located the Queen on Cygnus Prime. She's in a cavern 2 miles deep with at least 1,000 drones protecting her." "Your assessment?" Paul asked. "We can reach her, but not with conventional tactics," Ford replied. "I'm authorizing Protocol Black." Paul's expression changed for the first time, showing concern. "Colonel, that's not—" "It's the only way to buy the evacuation the time they need," Ford cut him off. "The rest of my team agrees. Protocol Black. It was a last resort, something the humans had developed but hoped never to use. It would get them to the Queen, but at a cost that made even Paul uncomfortable. "Very well," he said after a moment. "Good luck, Colonel. Earth stands with you." Ford nodded once, then ended the transmission. "What is Protocol Black?" asked Zalmor, noticing Paul's reaction. "Something you're about to witness," Paul said quietly. "Something that will show you why humans were both feared and respected on Earth for thousands of years before we joined the stars." On the tactical display, the remaining blue dots on Cygnus Prime suddenly began to move with increased speed, heading directly toward the cave system where the Queen was hidden. They weren't trying to avoid swarm forces anymore. They were charging straight through them. They're all using the combat stimulants," said Drax in realization. "All of them at once." Paul nodded grimly. "And more than the safe dose, they've made their choice." For the next 30 minutes they watched in stunned silence as 300 humans, pushing their bodies beyond all safe limits, carved a path of destruction through the swarm forces. They moved with impossible speed, ignored wounds that should have stopped them, and fought with a ferocity that shocked even the battle-hardened counselors. Then, as the last evacuation ships lifted off from the medical facility, the Queen's signal on the tactical display winked out. "They did it," whispered Zalmor. "They actually did it." "Yes," said Paul. "That's what humans do." "How many will survive using this Protocol Black?" asked Drax. Paul didn't answer. He didn't need to. The blue dots were already starting to disappear, not from enemy action now, but from the effects of the stimulants on their bodies. "Get medical. Ships to Cygnus Prime immediately," Paul ordered. Some might still be saved. As the command center erupted into activity, High Counselor Zalmor turned to Paul. "I think, Ambassador, that we have gravely misunderstood humanity, and I think the swarm will regret making an enemy of your kind." Paul looked at the screen, where the remaining human forces on the 3 planets were securing their victories against the now disorganized swarm. "The ban on human combat operations will be permanently lifted," Zalmor continued. "The council vote is already underway. It will be unanimous." "Thank you, High Counselor," Paul said. "But at this moment, my concern is for those who made this victory possible." As he walked away to arrange rescue and medical support, the council members watched him go with new eyes. They had mocked the human ban yesterday. Today, they had seen the truth, and they would never look at humans the same way again. 1 month after the Cygnus battle, the Galactic Council met again in full ceremonial arrangement. This special meeting happened rarely, only for moments of great historical importance. The huge chamber was filled beyond normal capacity, with representatives from every Alliance species present. In the center of the chamber stood 40 human soldiers in formal military dress. Their commander, Colonel Nancy Ford, looked different from when Paul had last seen her on the tactical screen from Cygnus Prime. Her face bore new scars, and one of her arms was now an advanced prosthetic. She had survived Protocol Black, though, just barely. She presented a stack of data tablets to the High Council, the complete reports from the Cygnus operation. High Counselor Zalmor read through the reports, his 4 eyes widening slightly, the closest his species came to showing. "Shock. These casualty figures cannot be right," he said. "You claim the human force suffered 63% casualties yet completed all mission objectives?" Colonel Ford stood perfectly straight, her face showing no emotion. "The figures are accurate, High Counselor. The swarm forces were much larger than our early estimates. We had to adapt." "Adapt," repeated Counselor Vereen, her skin pulsing with colors of disbelief. "Your soldiers deliberately collapsed a mining tunnel while still inside it to trap a swarm hunting pack." "A necessary tactical decision," Ford responded calmly. "The alternative would have allowed the swarm to circle around our position and reach the civilian evacuation ships." General Krillvax, who had personally reviewed all battle footage, addressed the council. "I have served in the Alliance military for 47 years. I have never seen fighting skill like this. The human soldiers don't just fight, they create new strategies under conditions that would freeze most warriors with fear." The council chamber felt very different from the mockery of just weeks before. Where there had been dismissive amusement, there was now a complex mixture of respect and unease. High Counselor Drax rose from his seat, a rare gesture during formal meetings. "Colonel Ford, I have 2 questions that I believe many here wish answered. First, why did humanity allow itself to be kept in support roles for so long without protest? And second, what does humanity want in return for its service?" Colonel Ford glanced briefly at Ambassador Paul Johnson, who nodded slightly. "To your first question, High Counselor, humanity knew that our natural combat instincts and methods would be disturbing to many Alliance species. We didn't wish our introduction to galactic society to be defined by our capacity for violence. We chose to integrate gradually, to be known first for our art, our science, our healing abilities." Ford paused, looking around the chamber. "As for what we want in return, exactly what we've always wanted. Full integration into the Alliance as equals. Not as warriors to be feared or support staff to be dismissed, but as partners in building a safer galaxy for all sentient life." High Counselor Zalmor gestured to an aide, who brought forward an ornate document bearing the Council's seal. "The Council has prepared a new treaty, changing humanity's status within the Alliance military structure. All combat restrictions are permanently lifted. Additionally, we request human instructors to train special Alliance units in your combat techniques." Ambassador Paul Johnson stepped forward to receive the document. "The training request will require some discussion. Not all of our methods are transferable to other physiologies." "We understand," Zalmor replied. "But there is one human quality that we hope is transferable. Your species' remarkable ability to face overwhelming odds without surrender." As the ceremony concluded, Lisa Wright joined Paul and Colonel Ford as they exited the chamber. "That went better than expected," Lisa remarked quietly. Paul nodded. "They finally see us clearly now. Not just what we can do, but why we do it." Colonel Ford looked thoughtful. "They're still afraid of us, just in a different way." "Fear can become respect," Paul replied. "And respect can become trust. It'll take time." Lisa smiled slightly. "At least they won't be mocking the human ban anymore." "No," Paul agreed, looking back at the council chamber. "I believe that particular joke has run its course." Outside the great council halls, the stars shone in the viewport. Billions of points of light representing worlds that would now know humanity not just as technicians and doctors, but as guardians. The swarm would learn this lesson too in time. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars, not by hiding its nature but by revealing it when it mattered most. Back in the medical section of the station, Sergeant Alan Foster watched the ceremony on a small screen from his bed. His body was still recovering from his second encounter with a swarm queen, this time on Cygnus III. The doctors had told him he would need another month before he could return to active duty. Next to his bed sat Private Diana Wilson, who had served with him on both Arcturus and Cygnus. Her left leg was now a prosthetic, but otherwise she looked healthy. "So it's official," she said, pointing at the screen where Paul Johnson was accepting the treaty. "No more pretending to be weaker than we are." Foster nodded. It was getting tiring. "Do you think the other species will ever truly understand us?" Diana asked. Foster thought about it for a moment. "They understand part of it now. They've seen how we fight, but they don't yet understand why." "Why?" Diana asked, curious about his perspective. "Because we know what it means to be fragile," Foster said simply. "Most Alliance species evolved with natural armor, or tremendous strength, or on worlds with few predators. Humans had none of that. We were the prey for most of our evolution. We had to become dangerous just to survive." He looked out the window at the stars, and we learned something they never had to learn, that being physically weak doesn't mean you have to be defeated. It just means you have to be smarter, faster, more determined. Diana smiled. "Well, they're starting to figure it out now." "Yes," Foster agreed. "And so is the swarm." On the other side of the station, Ambassador Paul Johnson sat in his office, studying reports from the front lines. Alliance forces, now with human combat units integrated throughout, were pushing the swarm back on multiple fronts. The tide of the war was turning. His communication screen lit up with an incoming call from Earth Command. He accepted it, and the face of Admiral Richard Carter appeared. "The treaty is signed," Paul reported. "Humanity is finally being recognized for what we can truly contribute." Admiral Carter nodded. "Good work, Paul. And the specialized training programs they requested?" "I've suggested we start with small unit tactics and basic combat principles," Paul replied. "The more extreme methods will need to be evaluated case by case. Not every species can handle what humans can." "A wise approach," the Admiral agreed. "We don't want to frighten our new allies too much all at once." He paused. "The soldiers who implemented Protocol Black on Cygnus Prime, how many survived?" 43 out of 300, Paul said quietly. "Colonel Ford among them. They're being given the highest honors the Alliance can bestow." Admiral Carter was silent for a moment. "Make sure the Alliance understands what those soldiers did. Make sure they know the price humans are willing to pay." "They know," Paul assured him. "They've seen the footage. They've seen us fight. They won't mock humanity again." As the call ended, Paul turned to look out at the stars. Humanity had hidden its true nature for 15 years, trying to fit into a galactic community that saw them as fragile and weak. That time was over. Now the galaxy would see humans as they truly were, not just builders and healers, but warriors when needed, protectors, survivors. The aliens had mocked the human ban until the footage left them speechless. Now that silence had turned to respect, and in time perhaps to understanding.